So welcome to the first video in the series. Now this is just a basic introduction to the Highlands and how it works. If you have been to Scotland before, the Scottish Highlands, if you walked here before, you'll probably want to skip this video, but this video assumes no prior knowledge of the Highlands at all, and I've realised over the years, speaking on the phone to first-time challengers or having email correspondence with them, that it's best not to assume any prior knowledge. So we'll start the basics here. So in front of me is my computer screen. This is my computer mapping application, Route Buddy, which runs on both Mac and Windows systems. Now, there are other systems you can use, of course, other mapping solutions. They're just as good. One of the things I do like about Route Buddy is that each year they produce a challenge map. And here it is. This is basically the TGO challenge area. There's the most northerly start points here all the way down to the most southerly one at Adrishag, and it covers the whole country. And Route Buddy update this map each year. So we're moving west to east across Scotland, and we're aiming to end at this town of Montrose here. And the reason we walk west to east is because these little villages on the west coast are so tiny they couldn't cope with 300 challengers descending up on them. The towns on the east coast are more developed, and we're heading towards Montrose. Now you'll probably finish walking a point somewhere between Aberdeen and Arbroath to the south of Montrose. There are a lot of lovely fishing villages. But once you've dipped your toe in the water, jump on the excellent bus service that runs between Aberdeen and Arbroath, go straight to Montrose, where you'll find Challenge Control, Challenge Headquarters in the Park Hotel, and it's here that you sign out. It's here that you pick up your certificate, have a chance to meet people you met along the way, and there's a celebration dinner on Thursday evening as well. Smaller celebrated dinners on Wednesday and Friday, for those that come in a little bit earlier or a bit later, Friday being the last challenge day. Now, one of the features of Scotland that I really like is that the landscape changes every day or every couple of 2 days. It's very dramatic, that, so you feel as if you're walking through a changing landscape. And I contrast that to some of the walking I've done in European mountain ranges, where to walk the whole range would maybe take a couple of months. And where the scenery changes, but not so dramatically, maybe every week or so it's changing. Or you think about the big North American trails, where again you're walking through a similar landscape for days on end. Scotland's very different. Everything changes every couple of days, and it makes it a rather special place, I think. And many of you will have come across Bob Cartwright, who runs the outdoor station. Bob's wife Rose once described it to me as being a real privilege walking across this changing landscape. And I know what she means. It has something quite magical about it. So let's just have a look at some of the regions here. So in the northwest, a very rugged country. The mountains climb very quickly from the sea. There are a lot of Scottish Munros in this area. These are the highest Scottish mountains, and the views looking west out to the Hebrides and the islands are just stunningly fantastic if you get good weather. It's a very dramatic part of Scotland. The landscape is almost 3D in the way it works. So you drop down from a high point and you'll see the valleys, the glens etched out in front of you. It's almost like having a 3D map in front of you. Fantastic area, the northwest of Scotland. But after 2 or 3 days, we find ourselves dropping down into a land that features some big inland lochs, some lovely forests, and we move east until we get to the Great Glen here, which is the big fault, geographic fault that runs through Scotland. We'll have a look at that in a minute. From the Great Glen, moving east, we've then got a kind of intermediate area of the Monalier Hills here, and a similar area to the south. These are not the biggest of hills, but they're stunning walking. There are still bits of the Monolea that are very wild and unspoilt. And a lot of this walking is overland. So those of you that like the challenge of going off trail and navigating across open country, which I know is quite an attraction for some of our visitors from the USA, these are great areas for getting properly lost into the wild environment. Moving east, then we've got the Cairngorm Mountains here, and your route will either take you through the Cairngorms. There's various routes, or maybe you'll skirt them to the north or skirt them to the south. But the Cairngorms are basically a very high plateau. It's the only area of natural tundra in the UK, so again, it's a very different kind of landscape, a very special landscape. And as we move to the east, the coast, we find ourselves walking into a gentler agricultural landscape, rolling hills, very different from the northwest, but still has its own beauty nonetheless, and some lovely little old villages and some lovely people to meet along the way. So Scotland changes as you move from west to east. Now, I mentioned crossing the Great Glen. I just want to have a little look at that, and we'll look at starting points in the next video. But the Great Glen is an interesting feature of Scotland. As we move east, there are only so many points where we can cross the Glen. So even if you've been walking alone for a couple of days and you haven't seen many challengers or many other walkers, you're funneled through these crossing points, and at that point you will meet people. And there's some very useful towns and villages along the way here. So let's just have a look at a couple of them. First off is Inverness, which is the major city in the Highlands. A very successful city at the moment. Lots of development work going on there. Now, not many challengers walk through Inverness. Those that do, though, find quite interesting routes around the Cairngorms, the north and the east. And if I just zoom out quite a bit, here's Inverness here. And I've known some people who've then taken the whole of the coastal path around to Montrose, which is an interesting idea. Most of you will experience Inverness on your way to your start point, so your train or airplane will come into Inverness. So it can be a challenge crossing point, particularly for those of you starting at the northerly crossings, such as Torridon and Strathcowan. But the crossing points to the south and the west are the most popular. So first off, as we move southwest, is Drumnadrochit. Now, this is a lovely little village, just here. It has a great campsite. It has some nice pubs. It has some shops to resupply in, chemists. It has a post office, which is really useful for picking up parcels that you've sent ahead and also for sending stuff home. It has hotels, it has B&Bs, and it also has the Loch Ness Monster Museum. And if you're into that kind of thing, you can easily lose 2 hours there. I've been to the museum, and run by thoroughly lovely people. I do think they're completely bonkers though, but there you go. So that's Drumnadrochit. It's an interesting place. And we cross the Glen here, we cross Loch Ness, the Great Glen, by boat. And there's a local sailor called Gordon who will ferry us across in the afternoon and the morning, next morning, to this point just south here, Inverforrig. And once off the boat, we're able to walk east into the Monolea and then through to the Cairngorms. It's a very popular crossing point, Drumnadrochit, and it's great fun. It's also got a kind of romantic feel to it as well. And as you cross on Gordon's boat, he'll tell you stories about monsters and all kinds of things. So it's a thoroughly entertaining trip. Moving south and west again, we come to the town of Fort Augustus. Now, this is a a busier crossing point than Drumnad Rocket. Fort Augustus is almost a metropolis by challenge standards. There's a great campsite here, hostel, shops for resupply, good eating places, B&Bs and so on. And Fort Augustus is really useful for those people starting at the most popular start points for first-time challengers. So if you're planning the challenge for the first time, there's a reasonable chance you'll end up walking through Fort Augustus. From Fort Augustus, we go east into the Monalier Mountains or to the south of the Monalier, and then again onto the Cairngorms. Moving south again, south and west again, we get to the Bridge of Orkney, which is literally just a road bridge. But it's quite handy for, sorry, I've just zoomed out. The walkers that come along here, and they get to the Bridge of Orkney, and you can go directly east. But a lot of people will simply take the canal footpath, the Great Glen Way, up to Fort Augustus here again. Moving, continue southwest, we've got a Lagan strip of land here, which is the end of the canal stretch. There's a bridge. There's a great independent hostel here. There's a really eccentric but lovely restaurant on a big barge, and there's Lagan Locks. Maybe not as popular as Fort Augustus, but it's moving east again. You can get into the mountains and this Glen Turret area here, which is always good to explore. Moving south and west again, we come to the town of Fort William. This is the second major town in the Highlands. It's a major tourist destination, lots of hotel accommodation, lots of B&Bs, outdoor shops, places to resupply, and it also has a hospital. Let's hope we don't need that, but it's nice to know. And Fort William is the gateway to Ben Nevis, the highest mountain in Scotland, and the mountains around it, and east through Glen Nevis towards Rannochmoor, which is a rather desolate area that you may have come through on the train coming north. Moving southwest again, we get to Cowan, which is another popular little crossing point. Again, a very short ferry journey. It's quite convenient for those people coming from the west along Glengower here. And again, it quick hop across. Moving east will take you back into Glen Nevis to Rannochmoor. So those are the Great Glen crossing points, and we shouldn't forget that we've got two more, one at Oban and one at Adrishag here. And although you don't have to cross the Great Glen there, if you imagine the main route west east is up here somewhere, obviously you're making up the distance by walking up to join the major thoroughfare to the east. But these two starting points, Oban and Adrishag, are quite convenient for those people who want a southerly route that perhaps skirts the Cairngorms to the south. So that's the Great Glen, which we have to cross at some point. Now, before I finish, I just want to say a little bit about getting here, because that's not that easy. I live in the English Midlands, and I can catch a train at 5 o'clock in the morning, which will get me into Glasgow to connect to the Glasgow trains to the northwest. But increasingly these days, I'll take the sleeper, which sets off on Wednesday evening from London Euston and goes up through the Midlands. And then once it gets into Scotland, it separates. So part of the train goes to Inverness and part of the train goes to Glasgow. And from there, you can pick up trains or buses, or trains and buses to your final destination. Increasingly these days, I stop overnight in Glasgow or Inverness or Edinburgh, mainly because the sleeper train is getting very expensive now. So if you're thinking about cost, you've got 2 days of travel to get north and some accommodation. So booking ahead is a good thing. Inverness has an airport, as does Glasgow. And you might find that Inverness airport is a very convenient entry point. It's certainly well served by the airports in London, Birmingham and Manchester. And if you book ahead, it's ridiculously cheap. It's much cheaper than the train, which sounds wrong, but there you go. Now, it can take 2 days to get to your starting point. So if you're booking your time away from work now, or you're thinking of your holidays, please bear that in mind. You need those extra 2 days to get there. And you'll also need 2 days to get home, although the challenge ends prior to a bank holiday weekend. So if you're coming here in the UK, certainly in England anyway, you've got that extra bank holiday day on the Monday to help travel back. But otherwise, you are adding 2 days onto the walking time at the beginning and 2 days on the walking time at the end. So, something to think about almost from the first point at which you start planning your challenge. If you're flying into the UK, perhaps flying directly into London and then immediately connecting out again, you'll need to think about where you pick up supplies, maybe where you pick up some outdoor gear, and we can help you on the TGO challenge board, or send an email to my blog and we'll try and help you with that. So there you go. That's just a very basic introduction to Scotland. This walk takes 2 weeks, or just a little less than that. But in that 2 weeks, you'll see a phenomenal variety of landscape. You'll have days walking on your own. You'll have days walking with lots of friends. You'll have nights camping out in wonderful scenery while camping. And then you'll have other nights spent in what we call the flesh pots of the challenge, swapping stories and catching up with people you may have met along the way. So that's the TGO challenge, a fantastic experience. In the next video, we're going to have a better look at the starting options you have for your walk.